Good evening. Thanks for tuning in to Men's Health TV. I'm Glenn Poole from the Australian Men's Health Forum, and you're watching the Men's Circle Meetup program we're running at 5 p.m. every evening this Men's Health Week. Tonight in the Men's Circle Meetup, we have 4 great men for you, sharing their experiences of participating and running men's circles and men's gatherings around Australia. We have Paul Henley, the director of the Pathways Foundation, Craid Wyld of Men's Group Online, Miles Protter of Men's Business, and our elder for the evening, returning for the second time, is Tony Webb, who's been around many gatherings over the years, including the Tasman Gathering. Tony, the circle's yours. I'll see you in an hour.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by just acknowledging that this circle, like much of our work in Australia, is done on Aboriginal land. And I pay my respects to the elders past and present, and particularly to acknowledge the elders in the Aboriginal community who've taught me so much about working in circle. Their idea of a truth stick as a tool for engaging everybody who's involved in any meeting in sharing their truth and drawing out of it a whole load of lessons that the elders then, in a sense, capture at the end of the circle and try and reflect back. A number of us here have used, I know Paul and I have both used that truth stick as something we've been given and given permission to use in some of our circles, some of our circle work. Speaking for myself, just as an introduction, I'm a kind of troublemaker that's been around the world on a number of issues, and I got involved in the men's work, largely as a result of realizing that my partner's daughter at the time, that it was a teenager from hell, could push every one of my buttons, and I really did need to do something about it. So having spent most of my life trying to change the world, it came back to trying to change me. And that's been an ongoing process that I have really valued so much of what other men have shared with me in that journey. It's been transforming. It's been transformative for me. And the theme that we've tentatively touched on for tonight is this issue of transformation. How this kind of circle work can be transformative for ourselves and for the men and boys and our partners and others in the community that are touched by this work. At that point, I'd like to hand over to the other guys to share a bit of where they come from and maybe what they are hoping to come out of tonight's conversation, and we'll see where it goes from there. Thank you, guys.
So thank you, guys. I'd like to check in. Paul, checking in. I'm sitting at the moment in Wadi country, south of Sydney. I'd like to honour traditional owners, past and present, that sit in this place. And I started in men's work for a very personal and selfish reason. I needed to get my act together as a man. And not long had I been a father at that stage and realised that there was some missing parts and some stories in my past that needed to come out. And I started to, back in those days, there wasn't many men's groups, especially in the area I was living. So I found myself an elder, a man called Don Bowick, and off we went looking for men. And in that journey, I discovered my own manhood. And part of that journey, after we'd been in it for a while, was really about what do men want? And most of the men at that time were talking about the difficult journey they had with their fathers, and they didn't want the same journey with their young people. So we kicked off a program back then called Journey to Manhood, that morphed in the late 90s into Pathways Foundation. And I'm still here, guys. You know, I'm still here because the work is so important. And that work's about supporting our young men and young women to transition across from that child psychology into that healthy adult psychology. One of the ceremonies, if you like, and one of the structures that we left behind as our culture moved into modern man. And I suggest it was one of the big missings. And my experience so far has been really a powerful experience in finding the truth behind a rites of passage as a transition, not just for our young people, but for many of us as we go through different stages. And I think I'm close to getting to that final transition and preparing myself for that. And I think in order to do that, I really needed to take a journey, and that journey has been where I am to today. That's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I think we're going in descending order of age. Since it was decreed that Tony was the elder and was sort of going to kick us off. So I'm Miles Protter, and I'm Canadian. You know, I guess I've got a typical West Australian accent. You know, not very many people actually come from here. And I do pay respects. I love this tradition of paying respects to the Aboriginal people on whose land we stand. So here it's Noongar people in around Perth, and I'm going to pay some more respects to some Indigenous folks in a minute. So I was living in the UK, and so in Canada, I had lots of male friends. I guess I was initiated by some older guys into pot, sex, and alcohol. My dad was dealing with the death of our mother. So I didn't have many older men in my life kind of showing me the way. I guess something inside me had me take sort of, I wanted to go to university. I wanted to study. I wanted to be a professional person. So I kind of went that route. But I really did feel very unprepared for a lot of the responsibilities of life. I got married. I think the thing that I wanted to really say was that I was living in the UK for quite a while, and I was always longing for male companionship. And I found it, you know, playing sports. I actually found an ice hockey league in London, but that was sort of like, you know, fun sports, kind of beer drinking, but it wasn't nurturing and nourishing. And I was longing for something. I moved to Australia in 2006. I took over a consulting firm here. And, you know, I couldn't believe it when I walked into Western Australia. There was this kind of flowering of men's work everywhere. And it was like, wow, this is really fantastic. And I was asked to take this group of fathers and sons to the desert to do a kind of, you know, I didn't even know really what they wanted. It was sort of like, oh, you know, some kind of initiation thing, you know, just make it up. So I read every book I could, and I talked to some people, and we went out to the desert. We served at an Indigenous school for the first week, and I tell you, the thing that really got me going was I heard about this talking circle idea with a talking stick. You guys called it the true stick. And I thought I would introduce this idea to this group of men and boys. And I told the first man, all right, look, here's the talking stick. You talk, and, you know, all you other guys, you just got to be quiet, no laughing, no judgment. And you just listen to this man talking. He's going to talk about his father. And so the first man talked about his father, and then the second man, and the next man. And there were tears, there was laughter, and there's a lot more tears and some laughter, and the boys couldn't believe it. And it's the first time I've ever experienced that ever. And that's when I got this kind of whole thing, my goodness, listening, this sacred circle of listening. I couldn't believe it. It was so beautiful. And these men, I get choked up just thinking about it. So it was like, and the boys couldn't believe it, and they were snuggling up to the dads. We did this every night. And one night, we were camping right out in the desert, and these indigenous guys came by. They're rangers, right? And they were just kind of checking out. We weren't burning the place down. And they said, "What are you guys doing?" And we said, "We're doing men's business, kind of like you guys do, but for white fellas." And they go, "Hey, great. Can we sit down and join you?" Oh, and they gave us some roux tails, and we barbecued up some stuff beforehand, which was wonderful. And, after we did our fire and our talk, they said, "That was so beautiful, guys. Thank you for including us. That was great men's business, and we acknowledge it and we love it." And I just thought, wow, getting the guys who've been doing this for 40,000 years to say that was good was just a beautiful thing. And so I've been really interested in men's circles for a long time, and I'll talk a bit more about what we do in some of the circles I do now. But I founded this group called Men's Business, and we're just really interested in men listening to men and in different ways. So we work with men's sheds and other groups. So yeah, so that's me for now. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Miles. Well, I'm Craig Wyld from Men's Groups Online. I'd like to pay respects to the elders past and present, not only on my land here, but on the land of everyone that's actually tuning in, not just us participating here, but those who are actually listening. There's my dad died when I was in my early 20s. I'm in my 50s now, so I haven't had my dad for quite some time. So the men's community, I've naturally warmed to the elders even within our community. Not consciously, but almost like father figures. And the welcome and the warmth that I've felt from this community it just makes my heart sing. I'm so heavily involved in the men's work community. Up here in Queensland, I was on the committee for the Men's Wellbeing Association, Men's Wellbeing Incorporated, a couple of years ago. Help out with their marketing. I'm a Common Ground facilitator, which is their 9-week men's program. Workshop presenter, all of this. And every week I check in with guys in my community. I have stuff going on. I drive out of my office and I've got a little spot. It's up in the bush. It's usually there's some kangaroos there, and I park under a tree. I pull out my mobile phone and I type in men basically into my phone. I get a whole list of guys' names. And if I need to deal with something, I'll just pick up the phone and just call them. And I'll just sit there. I might ring 6 guys in a row and just talk and connect. One thing I realised was at one stage I was manning the phones, and not that we're a call centre for men's wellbeing, but I realised that there were there's reluctant to use the word darkness, but there's a lot of pain in society. And there's men that are desperately in need of some help and support. And I'd talk to men that are up in regional areas, and I say, well, what can you do to help us? What's out there? And we didn't have the resources there for them. And yet I know the power of these men's groups that I've been involved in for years, probably decades all up. And I know that, but we're not even a fraction of a fraction of 1% of the population. And yet it's such a beautiful community, such a tribe, and such a, almost like a man love, if I can say that, but it's just such a brotherhood, and it's beautiful. And I thought, my God, the rest of the world just aren't even aware that this is available. So I've made it my crusade, my mission to help spread the word, and take what we do out to the mainstream. And so from that, I actually decided, now this is before COVID, but last year I thought, I reckon men's groups would work online. I reckon we can do this via the internet and leverage out our reach and bring new men into this beautiful culture. Now, that sounds funny now in light of COVID, because if any of you are watching have been involved in men's work, you know we can do it online. But when I first shared the idea last year, the common chorus I got was, no, it'll never work. It'll never happen. It's not the same. We won't get the connection. There's no hugs, etc. And they're right. It's not the same, but it's pretty bloody good. Okay, we can't do it's not as good as being in the same room, but there's a lot of people with disabilities, people who are out on rural properties, people who are working away from their families and their children, and they just can't get access to a regular sitting in a circle men's group, whereas now they can with technology. So I'm making that my mission, that my purpose. I did have some things I want to share with you tonight, but that's quite frankly gone all out the window because something significant happened with me today. So I've thrown what I had prepared out the window, and I'm just going to talk from the heart tonight, but I'll come back and I'll share more about that shortly. But yeah, that'll do for now. This is Craig just checking in. Oh.
So never let a gap go by, guys, and there comes a gap. And I'd like to talk in relationship to this subject we got tonight called transitions, because certainly the work that I'm involved in is about transitions. And certainly a rites of passage is something that we've left behind in many of our cultures. And for us, I think it's a really important aspect to try and bring back. Because the rites of passage, or the experience of that, it seems on the surface to be quite logical and simple, and of course a natural part of our history and what we've done. But the experience is a far greater effect. In fact, in many ways, it's the beginning of a portal that leads to many other experiences, and is the pivotal point that becomes a reflective comparison and continues to unfold as we move forward. So this rites of passage has got a deep and everlasting experience, and for us, we use a range of tools, and a big part of those tools is ritual and ceremony, and I certainly like to discuss that as a bit further, because I think it's an important aspect that we all use, even in online programs. It's part of us connecting together, and I think it acts on a DNA level and is a really important aspect of all work that we share together. But the other part of it, I think, that is almost a thread that holds much of us together is story. And I think story is a really important tool, and it certainly threads throughout many of the programs that I've been involved in, and what it sounds like to me is that many of us that are on this link tonight use story as part of the process that pulls us all together. And I think story is also deeper than just what it may seem on the surface, because stories are more than just stories. It's our stories that we make sense of the world. We do not experience the world and afterwards make up stories to understand it. Stories teach us what's real and what's true and what's possible. And I think my experience in the work is really about that being a really powerful thread that pulls us together.
One of the nice things about a circle, sometimes, as Paul just touched on it, the silences. It's the space between a sharing where I can get out of my head all the stuff that's been rattling around while the other person's been talking and actually tune into where we are as a group and where we want to go with it. If we were to pick up that idea of ritual, for a lot of people it's quite scary. The idea that you get into kind of a whole load of woo-woo stuff. In practice, in a lot of the men's circles I've worked in, the rituals are created by the people who are present. They may be guided by somebody who's got some particular experience and suggest a particular starting point. But the depth of where that ritual goes to depends entirely on the men who are present, sometimes men and boys. And it's about trying to, in a sense, create a metaphor for an intention. A truth stick is a ritual. It's an invitation to speak truth. A talking stick in a circle is given a certain role. It means that the man holding that stick knows that he will not be interrupted until he's finished. And when he's finished, he will either put that stick back into the circle and another man may choose to pick it up, build on what he said, or take it in an entirely different direction. Or if he really wants that feedback, he'll invite the men in the circle to each take that stick as it goes around and just share what has come up for them and put it back down. It's a way of creating safety. That's the intention behind it. And that kind of space. And there are others as well that never cease to amaze me. I learned a lot from Paul when we started to do some of the work that we've done around shame, where you can put elements of what is going on onto the floor and map it. And then you can invite people to step into that space and stand in each of those different spaces. And what never ceases to amaze me is that a man standing in the area where distress is marked, even if they don't know that that's a space on the floor, well, the whole body language will step into that space of feeling. So there's a power in ritual. And the core ritual in this men's work is about crossing a threshold from the world in which we start, where we live most of our lives, into a space that is different. Some people call it a sacred space. It is sacred in the sense that there are certain protocols that operate there, like confidentiality. What is said there is going to stay there. Respect, you will be listened to with respect. You will not be interrupted if you're holding it, those kind of things. And whatever process has gone on there is, in a sense, is transformative, because I am supported by other men in working on what it is that I brought into that space. And the other ritual is the closing circle. When we go around and say, okay, what do we get out of this? How do we ground this experience? And now how do we actually go back out into that other world, which isn't as safe? It isn't as sacred. It doesn't have these protocols of respect and care that we would have in that circle. And that is, in essence, the core ritual of what we do. There's more to it, there's more detail on it, and I'm going to share something that Paul and I both have worked on with Don Boak at the end of this as a resource that might be available to others who want it. But that is the transformative process, and ritual plays its part by having a certain set of suggestions, guidelines, and intentions that are mapped in some way for the group. That's my experience, guys. Love to know how you want to take it from there. Craig,
like
you floated this idea originally of transformations. Would you like to pick up? So tell us, what was your thinking when you proposed this for this group tonight?
Tony, awesome. Tony, if I could follow on from what you were saying about ritual and creating that sacred space, I think that's really important. Like it's so important for men to have a safe space where they can be vulnerable and they can open up and know that that it's confidential and they're not going to be judged and they'll be accepted as they are. I have my talking stick here. I have it while I'm here on the Zoom call, even though it's in a virtual space. I enjoy holding it when I'm sharing. And on the theme of transition, I feel that there's a movement happening, a quiet movement, and that is that where vulnerability was seen as a weakness, I feel there's a transition now or a movement across to vulnerability being seen as a strength. You know, I'll put it in my language, if I'm hiding behind my big walls, my big defensive walls, I'm not truly being courageous. But if I have the courage to bring down those walls and to stand, not physically naked, but to open and bare my soul to other men and say, this is actually who I am. I'm taking my protective mask on. I'm, pulling down my happy face. This is actually who I am. That takes courage. That takes real strength. And I see that vulnerability I see vulnerability as a real strength. And more and more men are starting to recognize that. And I'm seeing that because I feel that there is a darkness in our community. And, behind all these happy faces and these I'm okay smiles, there's often a loneliness and a despair. And, in Australia today, like 6 men take their lives every single day in Australia. That's over 2,000 men a year just here in Australia. I think it's close to 800,000 men or people die by suicide every year globally. That's an insane amount. Now, these aren't just stats. These are people's sons, people's fathers. These are people's brothers, cousins. And I said something happened today. I just got notified this morning by a cousin of mine that a member of my extended family had suicided. And I didn't know. I just found out today. And he's only in his 30s. I'm not going to pretend to know what he was going through. I'll just say that I'm assuming he was in a dark place, at least for a period of time. And I feel, this has to stop. This has to stop now. Like every single life that goes is one too many. We're in an advanced society. Surely we can find a solution to this. It doesn't have to continue. I'm not saying that, suicide, depression, anxiety, fear, these are complex problems that are interwoven into our society. And I'm not naive enough to say that one solution is a fix for everything. But I will say that men's groups, and even men's groups online, they do help. It's like, for me, it's like out there, there's men that are silently drowning in whatever the darkness that they're in. They're just drowning, and there's thousands and thousands of them. And I can't save all of them, but there might be a few I can throw an esky to. And that's how I see men's group online. It's an esky that they can turn upside down and float and get a little bit of support, and it may save their life, but at least it'll buy them some time and help them plug into other great men like the men here on this call tonight. So until professional help can come and support them. I'll let someone else have a share. Oh.
Thank you, Craig. There's a lot of things I love what you guys have all been saying about ritual and protocols, and I wanted to share a few things about that. And one thing, it's so funny because I just some guys from my church, we have a men's group every week, and we get together, and we've been getting together virtually. So, Craig, it works, totally works. It's not quite the same as being there, but you know what? More guys show up because there's less driving. We don't get the food and we don't get to kind of, we have one of the guys is a wrestler, or he was like an all-American wrestler. So instead of getting hugs, we kind of sometimes get a little punch or something like that. But it's sort of, you know, playful sort of kind of wrestling, which is very, in a way, very lovely. Also, you know, it's very loving and wonderful. But so we miss that. But the online thing is great. And the thing about the rituals and the protocols, so it's like, you know, we're kind of just normal, stupid guys talking shit, right, for the first 10 minutes. I don't know how it is with you guys in your men's groups, but it's like stupid guys talking shit. And then we kind of go, okay, and I've been officially designated the sergeant at arms. So the sergeant at arms says, gentlemen, we're now going to begin. And it's a funny thing, you know. And then I appoint a deputy sergeant of arms when I'm not there. And when we shift, and then something happens and we stop being stupid guys talking shit, we start going, okay, we're now in our men's group. And we have the same protocol that we go through every week. Because we're Christian guys, so we use this lovely process that's at St. Ignatius of Loyola, who's the founder of the Jesuits. He came up with a long time ago. It's called the Examen, and the Examen is a lot of you guys are probably familiar with it, but it's just like a way of saying, you know, of just saying, you know, where have I felt desolate, abandoned, disconnected in the last week? And where have I felt consoled, loved, connected, uplifted in the past week? We just answer those two questions. And it's just like 40 minutes of guys sharing. And that shift from kind of, you know, stupid talking about, you know, whatever, into that is just amazing. And you know how sometimes when you're in conversation, like you could be at the pub, people are kind of waiting, they're waiting for the other guy to stop talking so they can then, you know, get their thing in. That doesn't happen in a circle. So it's different, right? It's not a conversation. It's not talking. It's something very profound. It's listening. And we're honoring each other by listening. And we have a little ritual where we take we don't have a talking stick. We deliberately decide we didn't want a talking stick. We take a rolled up hanky, we just toss it to the next guy. And the guy who's got the hanky, he gets to talk. Now, I know that sort of maybe trivializes the talking stick idea for you guys, and you're probably scandalized by that. But it's an important thing, because you have the hanky, and that's it, man. You talking. And then we pray for each other, and we pray out loud for each other. And that's also a beautiful thing, men being quiet and praying and just saying little prayers for each other. I pray for you and the difficulty you're having at work, and I pray for you and the challenges you're having with your teenage son. And we say these prayers for each other, and it's like, it means something. It's very, very profound, you know? And because it's so awkward, you know, like, you know, I'm going to close my eyes and say a prayer, but we do it, and it's just a beautiful thing. It's like it connects us all together in a spiritual way, you know, and it connects us to the big guy upstairs as well. The last thing, I think, the transition thing, you know, and I'll talk about the transition thing in a second, but actually I want to say one other thing. So what we've been doing I've been doing this men's business is we're trying to figure out, how do we bring this sort of circle talking into other contexts? And so one thing was I've been doing some work I've sort of created this thing called the listening shed. It's just like an hour and a bit. And we're just getting guys to literally listen to each other, to shut up and just pair up and check in, one guy talking, one guy listening. And I do a bit of preamble. We do some fun exercises on how bad we are at listening, and we have a good laugh at all that. But you kind of start getting aware of listening and the importance of listening. And some guy said something the other day. I said, "How was that for you?" And one guy said, "I've got a fatal illness. I'm going to die probably in 5-6 years. And my wife doesn't want to talk about it because she's too upset. And tonight is the first time I was like blown away by this guy." And then this other guy goes, this is another night, I was doing this in another group. This other guy goes, "Yeah, my wife died, and I've been sorting through all her stuff, and I haven't been able to, and I know I have to throw it all away, but I feel so guilty. And I've just been paralyzed. And tonight's the first time I've talked about it." People are dealing with serious stuff. And you go, these are just guys from the neighborhood, or guys from another, someone else's neighborhood. I've just been brought in, and it's just, there's so much serious stuff going on that people are dealing with. And then some not so serious stuff, but it's just as important to talk about. Anyway, I love that. I just love that. And then we started doing it in men's sheds a little bit and here in WA. And it's been delightful to see the older guys, they're pairing them up, and we go into tea time at the men's shed and they talk, and they're paired up and they're just talking and listening, and it's beautiful. They love it. So, whatever we can do to help, Maybe we should talk about some personal transitions now.
Well, I'm still stuck a little bit, Miles, on this form of ritual, because the thing about ritual is that it's productive to have an intellectual conversation about it, allow our minds to wander through, but in actual fact, the part of the equation or the intent behind the practice is to move from the analytical mind into a heart or spiritual experience, with the emphasis on the experience, of course. And because we move into that experience with unclear knowledge of outcomes, as you've mentioned before, you start a conversation off, you're not sure where it's going to go. Therefore, it follows that there must be a high degree of trust. This thing about confidentiality, weaving the basket of trust in all groups. Now, in our past, normally that trust was given to holders of law, but most of those law holders and the law itself these days has moved, let's say, through the development of the way of science. And uninitiated men and women can be a difficult journey to reclaim that law. And that ritual is an intent, and that must be strong and malleable at the same time. And I think we need to evoke it through metaphor, as in poetry or storytelling or art and dance, which brings it to awareness. And the ceremony is the content of that practice. And that creates the container, which is made safe by weaving that intent. And it becomes greater than the number of its parts. The alchemy is the detail, and that becomes, if you like, the glue that holds the ceremony together. And we enter into this world of that which we know, we name and we know, that which we don't know, because often there's things that happen that we're not really sure about. And there's a third world, that of which we know we don't know. And I think ritual evokes that world, and it gives us so much depth in that third world. But having spoken that unthinkable, we come back to a full circle, a place of trust and innocence, where the belly makes the decision You know, it's what you feel about things. It's that knowing, and we all have those times where the knowings are really important, and trusting that place to become a deeper experience. And undoubtedly, we make mistakes, and some may suffer because of that if we haven't got the intent properly. But by being vigilant and recognizing the shadow that gives light, I think is an important aspect of holding any space. For the shadow in ritual is manipulation. And often I've seen that in circles where there's somebody that tries to manipulate that with an agenda. But it becomes very obvious if the intent is pure in the circle. And the openness, which allows challenge. And I think allowing challenge is really legitimate, because the influence is the process and the intent of the work. And that way the group becomes open and that trust is formed. And Craig, you mentioned the fact around that trust being a really important aspect. And as you suggested in the beginning, Tony, the agreement around confidentiality is one of those pieces of the basket that we're weaving to make this a safe place to walk towards. And certainly for men, you know, men that are coming from a place of projection or difficulty. You know, often we're told that men only know anger, but my experience is that that's just a leaf that passes in the night until we get to the core of our being. And that's the openness that men's circles and men's work can create. Thank you.
I just wanted to share one thing about transitions. Thanks. That was really interesting, Paul. Thank you, because that's like you kind of gave this conceptual sort of idea for the whole thing, which is really fascinating. I wanted just to get into an example, which is like, so the men's group I have at church, this circle that I belong to, I've been going now for about over 10 years, and yeah, it must be around 10 years. And this guy John, he's a cool guy from California. He runs it, you know, and a lot of expats are in that group. A lot of Brits and South Africans and Zimbabweans and Canadians and, you know, different guys. We have a few Aussies, but the thing about the transition thing is like, so I was running this consulting firm in 2015. I got a new boss, and you know, he's like, I think we need someone else to do your job. And then, you know, so that was like my big fall. And so I had to make this transition from being this important guy, you know, who was doing this important thing, to being a nobody. And like, that group, man, saved my life. And I went every week and I was talking about, oh, they did this to me today and they did that to me. And I, you know, I was feeling ashamed for feeling that way, right? Like I shouldn't be feeling that way. I shouldn't be angry. I should just be letting it go. And, you know, I should be all enlightened and just accepting. And no, I was angry, you know? And my men's group, they just listened to me, and you know, they must have got sick of it. I know they got sick of it, but they didn't care. It didn't matter. That's what Miles is dealing with, so it's okay. And guys are going through all sorts of transitions. You know, they're transitioning to teenage sons and teenage daughters. And other guys had, you know, dealing with daughters getting married, sons getting married. We've had to deal with a number of people in the second degree circle who've suicided, you know, people changing jobs, people, you know, losing their businesses or almost losing their businesses. So people going through these incredible changes and transitions. And the one solid thing is You show up every week. John has some bread and cheese, and we do our little exam, and then we pray. Every week, that's what we do. And men love that continuity, you know? So even though you have the transition and things are swirly and changing, there's something about that continuity, isn't there, that just holds us. And like you guys say, like you were saying, Craig, wouldn't it be great if more people, this is available to more people? So yeah, so that's me about transitions.
Thanks, Miles. There's a thought that came to mind that seems to link what Paul was saying about the importance of story. What you were saying about how that experience of feeling very proud and then suddenly being brought down to earth, that sense of feeling ashamed. And what Miles was saying about it, this issue of vulnerability. There's a lovely old story from the Arthurian legend that was originally trotted all over Europe by storytellers who embellished bits of it. And the little piece of that story, written down in about the 12th century, describes how Parsifal, the knight who had done all these wonderful deeds in the name of King Arthur and was lauded as the greatest knight of the kingdom, and they were having this big feast in his honour. And in the middle of that feast rides Kundry the hag, the incredibly ugly woman riding backwards on a donkey. And she publicly shames him by reminding him that he had actually found his way into the Grail Castle and had failed to ask the question that would have healed that kingdom. And the story goes on saying, well, so what value is all this knightly honour to him now? And yet he has one greater resource, a sense of shame that will always keep him from falsehood. When all is said and done, shame is the greatest gift and the soul's crowning glory. Somewhere in those old stories, there is a message for our time. And we can find some of those and we can bring them in as story, as poetry, or we share it as our personal stories in response to what another man has said. And gives us a space then to look at it slightly differently and make that transition that we need to make to move on to the next stage of our lives. Thank you.
Talking about shame, Tony, I won't identify who this man was, but I do have his permission to share the story, but I won't identify him. But there was a man I was sitting in a circle with one night, and he shared a very personal chapter of his life, if you like, that involved something he'd been carrying a lot of shame around for like over 30 years. And he declared in the circle that he'd never told a soul this in his entire life because he was just so ashamed of his behaviour when he was a young man in something that he did. And he, after a period of time, once he built up that trust, and I think it was Paul who said, how the trust is interwoven and builds up its strength. It's stronger as one than the individual parts. But he had the courage, and he shared it out loud for the very first time with tears coming down his eyes and just so much guilt and shame, and put it out there. And it was just accepted. No one reacted. There was no, oh my God, there was no judgment. It just landed in the void. And it got off his shoulders. And he literally sat there and quietly sobbed, and just of joy, of just to finally put down this weight that he'd been carrying on his own back for decades. And then the next man got up and just shared about something himself. But the other men in that circle felt the courage to then go deeper and to share more of their personal story because they saw that he wasn't attacked, he wasn't judged, he wasn't criticized, he wasn't condemned. No one raced in on a white horse trying to fix him or save him or correct him. He was just accepted as he is. And I think a lot of men have things on their chest, weights on their back, like this man did, that they're carrying that they don't need to. They can put down, if only they could find a safe place, somewhere where they feel comfortable, where they can, where they can actually just put it down. Think of a pressure cooker. What happens if you don't let the steam out of a pressure cooker? Eventually, what's going to happen? And I think that's what's happening with so many of our men in society. Whereas for me, men's groups and men's groups online, it's a way of just letting the steam out, just giving guys a safe space where they can just get stuff off their chest and talk about, as the others here tonight have shared, what's really going on for them. And, men's groups aren't the only way. Like sport is a great outlet. Exercise is a great outlet for people to get stuff off their things. But men's groups are another great outlet as for a lot of men. So, yeah. Hi.
I think one of the points that I'd like to make is that, the men's movement really, in comparison to the male population, is quite small. And often the men that come to our Pathways programs are not there at all for themselves. They're normally there because they're bringing their boy along, and they think it's important for their boy to move to a place. But often what happens by the time they get to the end of the process and they've sat through circle and they found a safe place, is that they realise that what they're getting out of the experience, in some cases, is more important than what their boy's getting out of it. Because their boys are already, in a new world for men, a world that's starting to open up, that's starting to find their voice. And maybe the opportunity to give men their voice and to find trust is the important point. And maybe that's the point we take out of tonight's conversation around transition, the transitioning from that place of no voice and structure to a place of heart and voice. And look, I can see the flag is coming up for our checkout. So while I'm got the stage, I'll do my checkout. So thank you for meeting you for the first time, Miles, and for you, Craig. And I really hope that your launch of the new process is working for you. And for you, Tony. Look, Tony, it's been many years since we've been in circle together, and I've certainly enjoyed listening to those dulcet tones of yours and seeing that beautiful face. So let's hope we can do it again. Thank you.
I'll jump in. So this is Craig, and I'm just checking out. I've loved this. I've absolutely loved it. And I just want to express such an immense heartfelt gratitude, not only to Tony and Paul and Miles and Glenn for putting this on in Australian Men's Health Forum, but also for the people who have actually taken the time to tune in and listen to us. And whoever you are, we can't see you, but I hope that you've gained something out of this, and hopefully the recording is of value to others as it goes down. But I just love being part of this community. This is just a sample of the type of men that are in this community, and this is an example of why I love it so much. It's such a respectful space, such a loving space and a safe space, and anything that we can do, or anything I can do to share it with the world, I'm committed to doing that, because I just feel more people benefit from this beautiful space if they could just get to try it. So, thank you. Hi.
I'll leave Tony. Obviously, we want Tony to have the last checkout. For me, it's the transitions. Men are always going through transitions in life, and we go through it from out of adolescence into young adulthood, into more responsibility, into our midlife, into later life into becoming elders. So there's constant transition, and we need wise, loving guys around us to help us through those transitions. So that's why I really recommend to anyone to find a group of guys and get a circle going. Go to Craig and he'll just set one up for you. You know, I got this men's business, this listening shed thing. We can come and do one for you somewhere and teach you how to do it yourselves. Just getting guys to listen to each other for an hour, you know, and give them the basic skills. So just whatever you want, you know, whatever you need. But I really want to encourage you, because we're always going through transitions until the day we die. And we need, it's a development, it's a change, and we need support to help us through to get to the next level. So thanks. And it's just been a pleasure being with you, gentlemen.
Yeah, like a lot of men's groups, you get to the end of the time you've got in the evening and you realize there's so much more that we've just started to touch the edges of. That was certainly the experience with the first one. I saw a bit of that in the one last night, certainly been a case tonight. And it's the thing that makes me keep coming back into men's circles. There's always more. And if I'm in doubt about going to a men's group, the times that I least feel like going are usually the times that I most need to be there. And as always, whoever's in the circle are the right people. It starts when it starts. It deals with whatever comes up. And when it's over, it's finished until the next time. I do want to share one thing, though, with the people who are looking in on this. I don't know whether I can do this. I'm going to just try this little exercise of sharing a screen, if it'll work. I don't know whether you can see this, but this is the book by Don Bowick called Marking Life Stages, where in the last months before he died, he pulled together his life's experience of doing this work on ritual, of rites of passage for men and boys. And I'm going to make this available to Glenn through the Men's Health Federation. And so there will be a link online where this thing can be downloaded if people want to read it in full. It's something that Paul and I both worked on with Don over the years. And it isn't just about men and boys, as Paul pointed out. Often the guys who come think they're coming for the boys, but they get just as much out of it in terms of their own transitions. There is a transition we make as fathers when our sons cease to be just boys and become men in our lives. So I hope guys who are looking in on this thing got as much out of it as we have.
And the book is available on the Pathways Foundation site as well, Tony.
That's great.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, men. You leave me having transitioned over an hour of just sitting here and enjoying this conversation, being silently in the background, yet in the circle with you, with a smile on my face and a smile in my belly and a smile in my heart. The Men's Circle meetup here on Men's Health TV. I'm Glenn Poole from the Australian Men's Health Forum. Thank you to Paul Henley, Director of the Pathways Foundation, to Craid Wyld of Men's Group Online, Miles Protter of Men's Business, and our elder for the evening, Tony Webb, officially a troublemaker. Wonderful to have you all here, and I hope you'll come back again, 5 p.m. tomorrow for another Men's Circle meetup. And with that, we'll check out and say good night. Okay, I've learned, Tony, how to actually stop the broadcast on Facebook without just kicking you all out of the room. The very first one, we all got to this like, really sacred spot. I just pressed a button
No,
and
we're
everyone got
still on.
dispersed.
We're still on Facebook. I can see us.
Yeah, that's 10-second delay.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks, Miles.
We're still on. We're still on.
Oh, no.
Put your pants back on.
That's right. Don't break out the cigars and whiskey yet, you know, and start the poker game, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
All the terrible things that go on behind the scenes.
That's right.
Is that going to be like? Is that going to be available like as a recording, you know, for the next day or two?
It just sits on the Facebook page in perpetuity. Obviously, it will disappear down the feed, but we're seeing a ripple effect, Miles. So
yeah.
I mean, you might get 20 people at any one time watching it on live, which is maybe 70, 80 people over an hour because people dip in and out.
Yeah.
But by the first Monday's now had over 1,000 views.
Fantastic!
Wow,
yeah. Fantastic!
Isn't that great? Guys in my men's shed group have checked it out, and they are watching these with interest. Yeah. Really great.
So, and then we'll look at.
We found this opportunity to debrief very useful after the Monday session. I think it maybe we could just do it briefly, like a very concentrated men's circle. How do we feel as a result of what we've just been through? And particularly if it's brought up anything for you that needs to be put out into this group to just take a look at. Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Look, I thought it was quite productive, although the depth that we reached felt a bit like skipping across the surface for me, and that's the nature of this particular piece. I think we each had our own agendas that we brought, so it's not like a true men's circle because we weren't just there on a personal level. But look, I still think very valuable because those men that are coming in, particularly men for the first time, are finding authenticity, and I think that's one of the essential ingredients in how these online circles work. And having now been involved in quite a few over the last couple of months, when the authenticity arrives, you can feel it, that knowing again. So I think the practice of that authenticity and speaking from the heart is a really important aspect. And I was really pleased with certainly the skips that we made over the surface of this pond tonight. So thank you.
Oh, look, I was just really happy to have the chance to share about my experiences in Circle, which has just been nothing short of wondrous, really. And it was kind of cool to sort of, I liked it because I was aware, I was sort of thinking, no, I'm just in this conversation with three other guys, and Glenn's sort of lurking there behind some behind the scenes, maybe catching up on emails. I don't know what, but hopefully listening. And sorry, that was just a joke, Glenn. Sorry, but so it's just talking to you guys, but also aware that there's other people listening, and that because it's recorded, other people might hear it. And so I thought that was just really lovely, and I felt very. I got quite choked up a couple of times, and that sometimes happens, but I'm not like a choke upper kind of guy on something that's screened publicly. And so you guys must have made me feel very comfortable. So I appreciate that. And it was just a really great opportunity for us all to share and to hear about, hear some great wisdom from Tony and Paul and Craig, and to hear just about, I love the rites of passage. I love this men's group online. I mean, Beautiful. So thank you. Just privilege, really. Great. Loved it.
All right, I'll jump in. No, I'll let Tony go last. Yeah, look, I agree with, well, actually, I agree with what both Miles and Paul said, but yeah, Paul, look, I mean, I would like us to go on deeper and make it more emotional and a deeper experience for those that are watching. But again, you're right. It wasn't a true representation of a men's circle because, one, it wasn't confidential, and we did, I guess, have our own, things of our own wheelbarrows to push a little bit. But it's, I like to think that it still was valuable for those who were watching. I hope that everyone got something out of it, whatever it is. And I'm a great believer that it is what it is, and it's perfect, no matter how it turns out. And those that need to hear a particular thing, I don't know what that message is. It might be something you said, Paul, or something you said, Tony, or Miles, or something I said. But whatever it is, different people will resonate with different messages. Some will resonate to the rites of passage. Some will resonate with the poetry. Some will resonate with the Aboriginal elders out in the bush, and some will resonate with, suicide within their own family and close to home. And so I feel that we did cast quite a wide net, and I'm hoping that that's of real value to not only men, but I think there were pretty certain there were a number of women watching as well tonight, which is fantastic. Look, my inner critic always thinks I can do things better, and I would have loved to have done, things even better. But, I'm pretty happy with how it all went overall. And like I said, it is what it is, and it's perfect, and just trust in the process. Oh.
Give you the last word, Glenn, so I'll go next. Yes, all of that. It's never going to be quite as deep. And at the same time, it touched on a number of the key things that I think are helpful to people outside who have not experienced men's groups. And particularly, as we all know, the women in our lives always want to know what the hell's going on in our men's groups. And we can't tell them. I love the way that, Craig, you actually brought it down to that edge of touching on an issue and showed that it was there. I mean, we had a similar situation on Monday where we brought it down to the edge so that those watching would get a sense that there was, we could go a lot further with that. But this is what one of the academics that I took a look at many years ago called the looking glass self. We are seeing ourselves in our own kind of mirror. I'm very conscious of being looked at from the outside as well. I've been giving some thought and been talking with Glenn about how we might actually use some of the processes we've got for listening circles at some point in the future as a way of inviting people on the outside to come in and reflect on what they've seen as this kind of stuff. But as a starting point, I mean, this process I think is absolutely vital. And for me, I feel comfortable with it. And at the same time, I'm aware that there was so much more. And the frustration I feel is that often there are experiences that I have that are to do with men that I've worked with also, that whereas, it's not just a matter of being myself vulnerable, but it's actually revealing that in circles we've had 5 men in one group who would talk openly about their childhood sexual abuse and how a group works through that. You've had guys touch on suicide stuff and how people will share how their own experience of walking to that edge and stepping back. And we've even had cases where guys have revealed their own abusive behavior and have had a circle be able to work with them to the point where they could reconcile that with the people who they had affected by that behavior and heal it. And we've had examples where it hasn't worked, and we learn from those too. So, but that's my frustration. There is the sense that there is so much more that we can't share in this forum. And I'm hoping that we'll find ways of just beginning to get something that goes a little bit deeper for people who want to stick their foot in the toe in the pond. But in the meantime, that little booklet by Don, it's available on the Pathways site. That might be the best link to it, Paul, if you could send that through to Glenn. Then anybody who's interested can literally download it. They'll get across to Pathways in the process as well. Otherwise, I can make it available. I think it's on the Tasman website as well. And if anybody does inquire, Glenn, about wanting it and can't get it any other way, I'm more than happy to send a copy out via email. It really does draw some of this kind of rites of passage work together very neatly, and it's the product of Don's life's work, really. So it's honouring that one of our significant elders in our movement. But that's for me for tonight. Yeah. Thanks again, Glenn, for doing it. I think this is a really, really important initiative, and I bless you for the way you've held it gently and offered it and brought people like yourself and others into it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Your energy and creativity and bringing all these people together. It's not the same as being all together in Melbourne for a day or two, but we're kind of all touching each other over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. It's extraordinarily deep and nourishing. It's fantastic. So well done, man. Well done.
Thank you.
Glenn, if I could ask, what was the feedback like? I didn't get to see the Facebook or any comments or anything. So how do you feel tonight was received by the people that were watching it? Just briefly.
It's just so warm. You know, people want to be there and listen. They love it.
Yeah. Cool.
Now, I think there's people in the men's movement who are just really grateful to see, you know, an expression of their life represented on social media rather than much of the nonsense that they might see on social media. But I can sense a ripple wider than that. And yeah, it's really positive. And I get I kind of don't want to think about it too much because I'm feeling it right now. But there's also a ripple of now that people out there in the movement are becoming aware that this conversation is happening and there's a potential connecting point for these conversations to happen. I've gone from, have we got enough people for Thursday to, we could do a second week now. And that's, you know, at the moment we're just doing five circles, but already we're oversubscribed and we could continue this conversation in different combinations of it or different depths of it or breadths of it, whatever. And you know, but I don't want to overthink that. I just want to bring people together and see what emerges out of that and be a facilitator. And that's on a personal level. This is just the best way to end a day. It's like I want this as my end of day ritual because my work is so head based, you know. And of course, I bring lots of heart into that. But here, it's just medicine. It's medicine for the soul. And what a wonderful privilege to be able to connect with men like yourselves without having to step outside of my office. It's extraordinary. So thank you. That's it. I feel we're providing a bridge. That's what I hope we're doing. We're providing a bridge between different traditions and groups. But most importantly, I hope we're providing a bridge between the wonderful world of the men's circle. And yes, it's not the same, but the world of the men's circle and those who've not yet met it, to give them an opportunity to peek inside and go, I'm going to go the full way and over the bridge and into a circle soon because I saw this online. That's my hope.
I think all this online thing, this that you've been forced into, has actually been an amazing opportunity to make connections that never would have happened. It's great. It's so good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say goodbye, guys.
Yeah,
I've got
well
another
done.
circle in 15 minutes. So
yeah.
Thank you.
I do another thing in an hour I haven't even got ready for. So there you go.
Good to meet you, Paul. It's beautiful to meet you.
You guys.
I'll send you an email, Glenn.
Please do. I look forward to many, many more conversations and connections.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Tony, for holding that. It's good to see you, Craig.
Yeah, you too, Glenn.
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you, Tony. I'm sure we'll connect in person sometime soon.
Hopefully soon.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, Craig. And thank you, Tony.
Just one last thought, mate. The 15 minutes that you have, 10 to 15 minutes ahead of putting it online is critical. That little opportunity to go around the group so that people check in from their heart. What are they bringing to it? I mean, Craig had got that personal stuff that was sort of sitting there. It would have been good just to have had that brought into our circle before we went online.
Yeah.
We could then have time to think about, well, how we might deal with it if it comes up.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, brilliantly. I think you've held this thing together beautifully.
Yeah.
I'll sign off at that point and say thanks again.
Thanks,
Anything
Tony.
else I can do to help with this stuff, let me know. I think it's amazing work.
Good.
So, bless you.
See.
Bye now.
Till next time.
Till the next time.